I am here today with Tom Hahn, who is faculty in the Department of Architecture, where he teaches courses that embed a focus on ecologically conscious design. He's one of two recipients of this year's University of Oregon Sustainability Award for Excellence in Teaching, an award sponsored by the Office of the Provost Teaching Engagement Program. This award recognizes faculty who have developed pedagogy and curriculum that reinforce and advance principles of sustainability through course design and instruction. Tom was nominated for this award by 2 colleagues, as well as 14 of his GE's TAs and students. The selection committee was impressed with how thoughtfully Tom integrates knowledge of sustainability practices into his courses, as well as his ability to connect meaningfully with students, even in large lecture courses. So welcome, Tom.
Hi.
And to start with, talk to me about one of your courses.
Well, I primarily teach design studios, as well as a couple of core curriculum technical topics classes. But my studios are my bread and butter. I most enjoy them. And we really do focus on ecological design across the spectrum in those studio projects. We usually are looking for community-based projects or something that has a benefit to the community. So some of the example projects we've done are a wetlands education center, a coastal ecology research station, a urban cycling community center, things like that. And what I'm always looking to do is combine the kind of ecological emphasis with amazing architecture. I'm a firm believer in the idea of both and with respect to that it doesn't have to be either or. And that I also believe that, oops, sound. I also believe that the potential for making the amazing architecture out of the ecological response. So that effectively a rainwater harvesting system that obviously is there to be functional and collect water for reuse could also be an amazing entry feature or some other kind of sculptural element in the architecture. So we're always looking for that kind of way to take the technical needs of the building, ecological needs of the building, and turn them into amazing experiential qualities. Say, for example, daylighting in a building. So you want to bring daylight in for energy efficiency, but you can also use it as a tool to make amazing spaces. It's kind of a classic architectural move, but now we're aware of the energy benefits of doing that same thing. So,
great. And so how do you teach the value of sustainability to your students and within the subject of architecture specifically?
Well, a couple of different ways. I try and connect the biggest scales of architecture and the issues around sustainability with their own personal experiences or with their own projects. So we try and embed ideas of ecology into the architectural design. And so thereby, as they're designing part of their project, we're bringing the bigger issues in with that. So here are the general issues around carbon emissions and carbon impact. So how is your building addressing that carbon footprint issue specifically in your project? What materials are you using? What kind of energy strategies, et cetera? So they get a real taste of, oh wow, these decisions come down to my actual design process. And in other classes or even in studio, try and connect it up with their own personal experience. So one of the things we do in one of the core classes is to actually have them calculate how much energy they use in their living situation and what kind of devices they might have in their house or apartment, and how much energy that uses and how much carbon footprint that represents. And then help them understand, okay, if you multiply that by the population, that's the kind of impact. And if you save 10%, right, and if everybody saved 10%, how would you go about saving 10%? And if you did, and everybody did, how much would that reduce the carbon emissions or the energy consumption? So bringing it, from the biggest scales into kind of more personal scales, I think is one of the biggest ways. And then the other way that I do it is talk about my own journey in the work and how I started out in kind of materials. Efficient materials and saving wood and things like that. And it moved into energy efficiency and then later into health and healthy buildings, the materials that we have in buildings and how to make them healthy. And at each step, kind of sharing what I learned, why I took that next step and why my sort of knowledge base grew and how they might grow their own in relation to what they are interested in.
Yeah, I love that because it sort of encourages a feeling that do your best with what you have now and know that you'll keep getting better or can keep getting better, that you don't have to have all the answers out the gate to start making better choices.
Yeah, and I'm very transparent about some of the kind of things that seem so important or so much the right choice back then that now 30 years later, I kind of chuckle at and say, wow, our focus was somewhat narrow at that time, or wow, there was a different way of thinking of that I'd never even thought of, and now feel much more knowledgeable. It's like I finally get to this point in my career and I finally feel like, oh wow, I actually maybe do know something. But clearly it's a growing process, a learning process.
Yeah, fantastic. And so your nominated materials mentioned in particular how good you were at gauging students in those large classes. So what approaches do you take to engage students in those large classes and make them feel seen and included? And why do you think it's valuable to take those extra steps?
A few things there. I feel like it's really important to get to know students. It helps me as a teacher to understand who they are and where they're coming from, and because then I can use the best tools I can to engage them, whether it's about resources that I can share with them or ways to ask them to do a particular project so that they're getting the most out of it or they're able to engage with it the most. I think those are really important. So that one of the first things I do in almost every class I teach, small or large, is try and get to know the students almost individually. Even in a big lecture class, 100 students or 120 students is a big class for us in architecture. To have a survey and ask them, what are you interested in knowing about? What kind of questions do you have? And then continually doing that through the term. And I tip of the hat to my colleague, Allison Kwok, in that regard, helped me learn that process really well. And what it does is then allows me to reference some of that during lectures. So I'm like, oh yeah, a few of you mentioned that you were interested in straw bale construction. Well, we're talking about alternatives to wood today. So here's straw bale construction. Or some of you said that, the energy costs in your locale seem kind of high relative to what you pay here in your home locale, seem high compared to what you see here in Eugene. So let's talk about that. Why is that different? Why is energy less expensive here than it is somewhere else? And really kind of bring the big numbers into a kind of personal realm. And then the other thing that I like to do in my classes, and again, tip of the hat to Allison with our environmental controls systems classes, when we do projects, we try to make them have a bit of individuality, allow for the students to bring a sort of personal perspective to them. So, and somewhat in a trade-off to maybe ultimate efficiency or effectiveness. But I think that's really important. They're designers and they really should have their kind of signature with their work. And what that does is allows them, say, for example, we do a bridge project in the construction class that I teach, where they design a little model bridge about 1.5 feet long, and then we test them to destruction. And it's quite the event, actually. But, there's some pretty fantastical designs and, maybe not the most sort of hyper efficient designs, but they're the signature of the student or the group of students. And that way, when they're testing their structure, they can really see that, it's their, they have ownership in that. And I feel like that's a really important way to do that, rather than expecting, okay, everybody has to do exactly the same, perfect solution. Let a little bit of freedom in there and let them engage with it that way. And then finally, again, reiterating that notion of sharing my experiences, I try to show the humanity in our work, all the lessons that I learned, and that's okay. And that they, as they're learning, also get the opportunity to explore things and try things. I talk about with my students, I want you to go out on that limb. I want to hear it creaking. I want to hear it kind of cracking, and you'd be a little bit nervous that you're too far out on the limb. And if it breaks off, we'll figure out how to climb back up the tree and pick a better limb,
Yeah, great. So you've alluded to this a little bit, but I'm sort of curious about your thoughts on what role can or should architecture and other design disciplines play in the pursuit of sustainability. And it's clear it's something that you're very passionate about. And so how do you convey that passion to the students as well?
Yeah, well, architecture by definition, and the other design disciplines that we have in the School of Architecture and Environment, landscape architecture, interior architecture, really by definition are about designing elegant solutions to complex challenges in an environment. And we are definitely in a challenging environment right now. And so I encourage the students to not only learn the tools and methods that they need for their own profession, professional goals in architecture or interiors or landscape architecture, but to see that more broadly and see that they've actually been learning how to be really creative problem solvers, and that can be applied to many different scales and realms. That, especially in this current economy and with the COVID-19 situation, that we have to be incredibly creative with solutions, and they may find that there are opportunities in realms that they never even considered, and that they can use their problem solving capabilities to help out in many different areas. And then, I've been in this work a long time and feel like there are many different opportunities that I've had. And I look back on all of the kind of strange and crazy things I've done as an architect, as a builder. I was a publisher for a while, an editor of a magazine. I taught community classes. I've worked in community on building projects, and I look back on it and think it's a little bit mixed up, but I also see it as a really kind of strong thread through a whole bunch of different realms that has made me a more knowledgeable person, but also has brought a lot of different skills and abilities that I have to different realms, and that the students can do the same, on their own journeys. That there are many different places they can bring those creative problem-solving skills, and that they should take heart in that, and know that it's been said that architecture or the design professions in general are kind of the last great Renaissance educational modes, that we learn so many different things about so many different realms that you can bring your work to almost just about any realm there is.
Yeah, if you think about it, it is sort of like a synecdoche for a liberal arts education in and of itself, with both science and math and art and human focused work and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So my last question for you is about the University of Oregon as a research institution, as a teaching institution. Why do you think it's important to teach and to research and to engage with these sustainability issues here at the UO? And I'm thinking of that three-legged stool of sustainability that includes environment, equity, and economy. So feel free to talk about whichever pieces resonate most with you in your teaching work.
Yeah, well, first of all, just a shout out to my colleagues and the students. I've taught at 4 different institutions before this, and I've also been a licensed and practicing architect and builder. And it's an amazing opportunity to be here and work with the students and colleagues that I have, and particularly around this issue, that sustainability isn't just some catchphrase that's bandied about in some other places I've worked, but that it actually is embedded in the culture, embedded in the kind of thinking at almost every level here. And in every program I've talked with has some aspect of talking about sustainability, and really around those 3 that you're describing. That there's environmental thinking, certainly in places like environmental sciences and in the design professions, but also the kind of economical thinking, sustainability of the economy and business program, and then this notion of equity and kind of social sustainability throughout the campus and all the different programs in CAS and other programs. And I really see that all coming home in the School of Architecture and Environment and the College of Design, that we have a little kind of touchstone in all those realms. And I think it's vital, maybe obviously so, to be thinking about sustainability in these times. And I think particularly here at the University of Oregon, the students that come here are looking for that, and also finding it, I think, across the faculty and their fellow students. And so many different programs that are available here, and I'm glad to be just part of just one of many. And I think that with respect to the 3 E's, the way I bring that in my classes is something I call the 4 E's. Not to one up on it, but just that effectively bringing in this notion of a 4th E that I'll get to, but the environmental sustainability, certainly, economical sustainability, ethnological sustainability, the kind of social, cultural realm. And then lastly, for us, experiential sustainability. And the idea being that there's some part of the innate essence of humans with respect to design, that if a design that touches us and makes us feel a kind of joy or exuberance is also going to be helping to make it sustainable. And so in my work, what I look to do is to balance those 4 E's, essentially saying that you need all 4 of them to make a sustainable project. That if one is particularly focused on just one of those, that it may not be as sustainable as something that might be a little more balanced. And so we have a really fun exploration that we do, in particularly in the design studios, where we look into what are the environmental issues in this area, what are the economical issues, what are the ethnological, social issues in an area, what are the experiential possibilities in a place, and then we use the design as a kind of resonance with that, finding a harmony, a synergy with those 4 E's, and the goal being to balance those and express them, finding synergies between them, so that the form and space and the overall solutions of systems come out of all those 4 realms in balance. And that's a way to seek out sustainability. And I think the students see the kind of potential of that and get excited about it. And what I like about that is there's a little bit of something for everybody in those 4 and in the 3 that you described, that students can see, oh, wow, I'm interested in this one, environmental maybe, or I'm more interested in the economical, but I see the benefits of these others. And I really feel like that helps students see that there's a breadth and a kind of importance to all those realms. And they see it in their research before a project, and then in their own design solutions.
I love that. It makes me think of a kind of a, whether it's joy or it's comfort or it's inspiration, thinking of like big cathedral-like spaces or things like that, that there's kind of a new emphasis on human thriving as well, and sort of the pleasure, that comfort, that these are things to value and design for as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's important that, and this was actually a mentor of mine many years ago, Eddie Jones, who said, I want people to love my buildings, and that way they'll take care of them, and that way they'll last a long time. And then that in that way is its own kind of sustainability, taking the resources that it takes to make a building and make them last a long, long time.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, Tom, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for your time and for your work, and congratulations on your award this year.
Thank you. And thank you to the Office of Sustainability and the University of Oregon. It's an amazing place to be, and amazing work that everybody does here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll shout out to the Teaching Engagement Program, which sponsors this award. And so they're really the leads on that as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I took the summer workshop last summer and had an amazing experience learning many wonderful things that I've now brought into both of my kind of realms of teaching, the lecture classes and the studios. So yeah, thank you very much to the Teaching Engagement Program.
All right, great. Thanks, Tom. Have a wonderful day.
All right, bye-bye.